Those of you who are regular viewers of my channel know how much I love vintage electronics and analog media. Well, I recently came across something that I just had to have. Now, it wasn't another compact cassette device. This time, it's something that plays the largest cassette that's ever been made for music. And that is this, the 3M Cantata music system. Stay tuned. Now, this is definitely a device, if you haven't heard of it, you have heard it. If you're my age or older, if you were alive in the 1960s through probably the 1990s, more likely than not, you heard music being played from one of these at every store you went into. 3M actually introduced this format back in the 1960s as a background music system to be played in stores and offices. It started out with just a couple of different selections and then grew as time went on. And this one happens to be a continuous Christmas tape that's about 20 hours of music. And it plays non-stop back and forth. One of the interesting things about this format is it's actually two reels. It's quarter-inch audio tape, just like you would find in a reel-to-reel recorder, but it actually plays back at 1 7/8 inches per second. So it's much, much slower than what a normal reel-to-reel recorder would play at, which is 7.5 inches per second, or 3 3/4 inches per second for some later releases, which are very slow for music. But being background music, it doesn't have to be the highest fidelity in the world. It just has to be something for people to listen to in the background as they're shopping or doing their work in the office. Now, it actually works by bringing the tape from one reel around and onto the other. It does have a reverse mechanism in it. It's pretty neat. Let's take a couple of minutes to look at the player with the cassette just a little bit closer. So as I mentioned just a second ago, this uses the same quarter-inch tape that would be found in a normal reel-to-reel machine, and it's on tape reels. Now, these are actually about 8.5-inch reels, so they're not a standard size, and they're in a stacked format. What happens is the tape comes off of the rear reel here, goes up and over this, comes through and loops, and comes back around onto the other reel. It's really a fascinating format, and it lets you have basically a reel-to-reel in half the space. But it does make probably the biggest cassette that I've ever seen, and certainly the biggest one that was ever used for music. Now, they say with these, the original system was called the Cantata 700, because they were advertising 700 songs per cassette, which works out to 24 to 25 hours worth of music. It's really a fascinating format. They wanted to make sure that people didn't get too tired of the music being played over and over. But as you can imagine, people probably didn't change these tapes out very often, so the same music could be playing for years and years. This particular cassette is actually, looks like 1985 is when this one was from. Like I say, this format actually started out in the 1960s, so this is a later model. But people would rent these tapes. As you can see, it's a feature music rental library, and they could return those for a different tape most of the time through their dealer in their town that took care of them. They'd come in and swap these tapes out for them. But we were lucky enough to end up with this one along with the player. So let's take a look at the player and see what it's all about. Now, the actual player unit itself is pretty simple. These were designed to be tucked away in a closet somewhere, something that you wouldn't have to mess with very often. Has a dust cover that you would remove in order to put the tape in. And it's a very, very simple system. It's a mono head, and it actually moves up and down depending on which side of the tape it's playing. There's a spindle in the middle to help drive the reels, a brake on this side to keep the reels from unspooling after you take the cassette off, a pinch roller and a cap stand, and then the auto reverse mechanism here. Very, very simple. Now, as far as the controls and the panel connections are concerned, they're pretty simple as well. The front panel just has a on and off or play and stop switch. Over to the left is what engages the system to play the tape. You do have a volume control knob here, because this does have a built-in amplifier, so you can send the sound directly off to the speakers in your store or office. And then it has a music volume here, because you can connect a microphone to these, so you could have PA announcements and everything over the same system. It also has a full range of connections on the side. These are basically for different speaker connections, input connections for a microphone, and also for a timer. These would stay running 24/7 unless you came in and physically turned off the unit or unplugged it, or if you had a timer hooked up to it, it would start and stop the music at predetermined times during the day. And around the back, it just has the power cord, a connector for additional speaker wiring, and a cooling fan. Really a very, very simple unit. Alright, so let's take a look and see how this thing works and how easy it is to play a tape on it, get it going. We take our cartridge, drop it right into the machine here, and then all we have to do is turn the player on.
The stars are brightly shining, it is the night.
Alright, so when it would get to the end of the tape, it would actually pull down on this mechanism. You can see the play head move to the top, and then our second program starts. Probably not something we want to add to our personal music collection and listen to all the time. I probably gave people a lot of bad memories of shopping back in the 80s with playing just those little snippets. Now, most of the time, these were selections that were played by the 3M Orchestra, which I'm sure is something that everybody wants to add to their collection. But this Christmas one actually has some famous artists on it, so I was hesitant to play too much of any of the clips for fear of copyright matches. There was one that was actually, I believe, Karen Carpenter on here. So it looks like 3M actually licensed a bunch of commercial Christmas music to actually put on this cassette. So that's actually pretty neat. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you found this huge cassette as fascinating as I did. This isn't something that you ever see, but it's something that everybody's probably heard. So I thought it'd be something kind of neat to take a look at on the channel. If you have any questions about it, would like to see more, or there's something that I missed, please feel free to comment below. Start a conversation about it. Would love to hear from you. Please subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out. Like the video. And we'll see you guys next time here on the Vintage Electronics channel.